Welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills. Today we're joined by Whitman County District Court Judge Douglas B. Robinson. You know, we all make mistakes in our lives, but it may surprise you when what seems like a small infraction that can change a person's life forever, and where some of those dangers are. Before we get started, going to remind you at home to join in the conversation. You can connect with us on Twitter at NWPTV. Use the hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, you search Northwest Public Television, or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Judge Robinson, thanks for joining us today. Great to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, I know that, or at least I understand, that you have quite a passion for helping people understand what's ahead as they navigate their way through the system, the judicial system, if they happen to get themselves into that system. Let's talk a little bit about, why you're so passionate about that first.
My entire legal career has been essentially criminal defense, and I've always worked with people who have been in a situation where they're facing charges.
Yeah.
And now as a judge, I see that on a daily basis as well. And what we see in the court is people coming back years after even a minor offense to try to get a charge expunged or vacated, otherwise removed from their record, because it has popped up and created problems for them in employment or in renting an apartment or getting a loan or getting auto insurance or any number of other things. And even what college students and others might regard as a fairly minor offense, a minor in possession of alcohol, a minor frequenting a tavern, trying to buy beer when you're under the age of 21 and misrepresenting your age, lying to an officer and telling him you're 21 when you're not, or giving them a false date of birth or name to try to evade being cited. All of those things can result in criminal charges which have tremendously serious consequences. But once you're into the system, there's nothing that you can do about it personally to eliminate that record. Those records are public information. They are available to anybody who wants to go looking for them online. There are companies that gather that arrest data and conviction data on a daily basis from all 50 states, compile it and sell it. And anybody can go online using their smartphone or their home computer, just by typing in search criminal histories or obtain criminal records or anything of the sort. And you'll come up with dozens and dozens of companies that are selling that information. And employers use that, lenders use that, landlords use that, and anybody who is interested in finding out about you. And the problem is that you cannot make it go away. Once it is there forever.
Do you think that that is a bit of a misnomer or a misunderstanding by people? Oh, there's a statute of limitations on any one of these things, and sooner or later it will go away, like a traffic ticket, for instance, does after some period of time. Do people just not understand that?
Yes, very much so. There are all kinds of misapprehensions out there. People think that it can be expunged. People think that it's private information. They don't understand how available it is. And that particularly pertains to juvenile records. It used to be that juvenile records were sealed at 18 and destroyed at 21 or expunged, but that is no longer the case either. So you don't have that leeway even if you're under the age of 18, but particularly as an adult, when that gets reported to the criminal justice system in the state of Washington, it's the Washington State Patrol Records section that maintains those records. Yeah. Then it's there forever.
Now, we're doing this show in Pullman, Washington, at Washington State University. So we'll talk about students just for a moment, and you've mentioned them a little bit. So students, not necessarily always known, and we've all been through it for making the greatest of decisions along the way. So maybe you get yourself into a situation where you've got something now that's on your record, and you've seen these people in your courtroom. Okay, so we zoom ahead several years now, or at least a few years maybe, and we're applying for a job. It seems like the natural place where you can really run into a stone wall might be the job market, or just trying to apply for a job. Is that the case?
Yes, I think that is the most common area.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when you're applying for a job, those are frequently submitted online. You never have any face time with the hiring personnel, the HR guy, to sell yourself.
Yeah.
They're looking at you on paper, and if they see that you've got a criminal record and the next guy doesn't, it's a pretty easy choice to make. Particularly if the charge is something like an assault charge or a theft charge, which are horribly damaging. We had a rash of cases, theft of alcohol from Walmart before they locked it up in glass cases. And people would be charged with both a third-degree theft charge for the stealing and the possession of alcohol charge because of what they took. And you put that combination together and you're in very serious trouble. But yes, job-wise, we have seen people come back seeking to get even something as minor as a minor in a public place, exhibiting the effects of having been consuming alcohol, dismissed because 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, it has come up in a job interview context and cost them an opportunity.
And I can see how if you don't ever get the chance to sit down in front of that person and say, look, I was 19 years old, I made a mistake, it was a long time ago, but you never get that chance when you're culled from the group by just having that on your record. You never get the call back.
That's right. If you're fortunate and able to interview for a job personally, then you can do that. And what I tell students and others that I see in court, if you have only this offense on your record, and if you can tell a hiring manager that you learned a huge lesson when you did something foolish, you never repeated that same mistake, you're a better person for having gone through that experience, et cetera, then perhaps you can overcome that. But if you have 2 or more and can't say that, or if you never have that opportunity because it's all done online, then you've got a real problem.
Let's talk about online. How has the internet changed how affected and how easily this information is now accessible to those who want to find out about you and your record?
It's a whole new world because of the online access. 20 years ago, it was all paper files, paper records. We shredded those after 7 years. They were gone. The criminal histories were not public information. But after several suits to gain access, after the advent of the internet, all of those things are now as easily accessible as a smartphone.
Sure.
And for somebody who knows how to do it, you can find somebody's criminal history in 30 seconds, literally. And for sometimes free, sometimes $9.99 on a credit card, or a little bit more, you can get anybody's criminal history you want. And places like large property management companies that screen hundreds of people every year simply subscribe to those services and do it as a routine part of any application process to rent an apartment. I've had people who have been turned down for an apartment rental because of one MIP on their record. Another who got or was required to post a double damage deposit because he had an MIP on his record. Others who have had assaults who would not be granted an apartment rental. So it has those kinds of consequences, and the internet's the whole key because it makes it so accessible.
How often is alcohol involved in the offenses that you deal with?
I would say that alcohol or drugs are involved in about 90% of the criminal charges that we see in one aspect or another. Whether it is a purely alcohol-related offense, like a minor in possession of alcohol or a DUI, or whether it's an offense which was influenced by alcohol, an assault charge, a theft charge, some other charge which is monetarily based because the person has expended all their funds on alcohol or drugs, relationship problems, just a tremendous number of cases result from the use of alcohol and drugs. I had one just last week where a person committed an assault in the emergency room after having been taken there for detox, and fortunately walked away without a felony conviction because he nearly kicked a nurse, which is a Class C felony offense and a 5-year penitentiary term potentially. So his life, professional life, could have nearly been over at that point, but missed by a fraction, got the charge reduced down to a minimal offense, and was very, very fortunate. But had that person not been consuming alcohol, it never would have occurred.
As far as DUIs are concerned and the way that they're processed now, does it affect your travel? Can it affect your travel?
Yes, absolutely. Canada will not let you into the country if you have had a DUI. I have seen people who have been denied entry into Canada because they had a DUI, which was reduced down to a lesser charge. We got a call, I would say 2 or 3 weeks ago, from a gentleman who was at the Canadian border, had been denied access because he had a DUI, and was wondering if we could expunge it from his record, which we could not. But he got that DUI 30 years ago when he was a student at WSU. That's why it was in our court. And all these years later, he's probably pushing 50, it comes up and creates that kind of problem for him. And I have heard stories of many, many people being turned around at the border.
Wow.
Interesting one about a ship's captain who couldn't dock his a freighter in Canada at Vancouver because of a minor criminal conviction, but that we'll have to wait for a later time.
Amazing. What are the most common offenses that you see coming through your courtroom?
The very most common that I see is driving while license suspended in the 3rd degree, which means that you're driving a motor vehicle at a time when you are eligible to get your license back but do not have it. Most commonly that's because people haven't paid their traffic tickets or fines, and the license becomes suspended as a result. But we also see situations like that where a person under the age of 21 has been convicted of a possession of marijuana charge. That's a 1-year revocation of your driver's license. A person who has a DUI has a requirement that they have SR22 proof of liability insurance. If they don't have that, their license will be suspended. So that's a large part. Absent that, we see minor in possession charges or minor alcohol offenses that are related to minors in some way. Minor frequenting a tavern, possession of a fake ID, misrepresenting age, trying to buy a 6-pack at Dismore's. Those kinds of charges are very common. Beyond that, we see a lot of 3rd-degree theft charges, assault charges. Again, that involves alcohol most of the time, and a wide variety of others, but those are certainly the most common.
Are there other points of danger or flags that maybe we should be aware of and look for, whether it was in our children or in ourselves or in friends?
If a person comes to school, or if a person observes somebody who is beginning to do things that they wouldn't normally do, somebody who goes out and parties 4 nights a week instead of studies, somebody who's hanging around with people who are over the age of 21 and they're under the age of 21. All of those things are huge red flags that something is going to occur. I refer to every major college campus, and WSU is no exception, as an alcohol-rich environment. It's everywhere. And I ask students regularly, how long is it going to be before you have the next opportunity to go drinking? Frequently it's that same night. Others will say, well, not until the weekend or something. But it's always available. So you have to continue to do those things which you know are right. You have to use your common sense and stay away from trouble, and don't get sucked into doing things that everybody else is doing because you don't think it's a problem. If you know it's a problem, you need to avoid it. And everybody who's been raised in this society knows what the rules are. I hear people all the time telling me that they made a mistake, and I challenge them on that and say, no, it wasn't a mistake. It was a bad choice, and you've got to accept responsibility for that. So if people are starting to do things that they know are wrong, they need to get that turned around.
Well, thank you very much. It's great having you here today.
My pleasure. I hope that it will have some benefit.
Thanks again, Judge Robinson. Great to have you here and for joining us. Thanks at home for helping us. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week by tweeting us, linking on Facebook, adding us to your circle on Google+, or emailing us at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Send us those show ideas as well. If you missed any part of today's show, don't worry, it'll be available online at nwptv.org. Next time on xConnect Northwest, we're talking campus safety with the Assistant Chief of the WSU Police Department, Stephen Hansen, live from our Pullman studios. If you have questions for him, feel free to connect with us online. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.